Cultural composition or biologically inevitable. Winston Churchill, Prime Minister, United Kingdom from 1940 to 1945, once stated, "The story of the human race is war. Except for brief and precarious interludes, there's never been peace in the world, and long before history began, murderous strife was universal and unending." Churchill was an immensely significant part of World War II, with extensive experience with warfare, along with people's actions and behaviors during a time of intense violence in international history. Violence has been present in nearly every society ever studied and recorded. Acknowledging the innate instinct to resort to violence allows for better understanding of human behavior and therefore the prevention of violence in the future. As Thomas W. Bloom, PhD Assistant Professor of Department Counseling at Oakland University puts it, violence is this naturally occurring socially undesirable activity that is a victim or a group of victims. However, research conducted by psychologist and professor of cognitive sciences Steven Pinker has shown that violence has been on the decline for decades and that humans presently enjoy the most peaceful time of our species. As humans become more consciously aware of the reasons people commit violent actions or go through violent periods, the question begs, how does the innate human instinct to be aggressive correlate to violence in modern society? In order to prevent violence in society and the idea that it is not uncontrollable, the general public must understand why people turn to aggressive behavior in the first place. Humans are prone to violent behavior due to the social advantages of being aggressive and the innate tendency to live by violence. Society tends to discourage violent actions such as fighting in schools or arguing in the workplace, yet violence and aggression have been advantageous since the dawn of man. Anthropologist Napoleon Chagnon in the 1960s studied a primitive society, the Yanomami people, in the jungles of Venezuela. Chagnon, a professor at the University of California at Santa Barbara, studying the Venezuelan part of the Amazon rainforest, studying the Yanomami tribes. After spending months with the tribe, he wrote a book called Yanomami, the Fierce People, about the world's most famous uncultured tribe. Chagnon witnessed frequent chest-pounding duels and deadly inter-village raids. They lived in constant violence, fighting and raiding nearby villages, with Chagnon describing their lifestyle as a state of chronic warfare. Despite having plentiful resources, over a 70,000-acre area of land, and only a handful of tribes inhabiting the area, they still fought neighbors over resources, which supports that violence is just a way of living. Chagnon observed that those who were more aggressive had more wives and fathered more children. If aggression and an ability to fight means attracting more mates and producing more offspring, then the actions and behaviors that lead to the production of offspring is an innate instinct that ensures survivability of a species. According to the Britannica Encyclopedia, Charles Darwin, an English naturalist, geologist, and biologist in the 1800s, found that when discussing natural selection, competition results in the survival of the most efficient competitors, a natural instinct common in countless species, predominantly in mammals. These historical outlooks are key signals of the advantages of aggression. In basic culture, aggressive behavior is only seen as acceptable on a sports field or in a ring. Richard Wrangham, a British primatologist and researcher on human evolution and violence, connects people's violent tendencies to those of the chimpanzees, humans' closest biological relatives. He elaborates that we are the day survivors of a continuous 5 million year habit of lethal aggression. In Wrangham's studies of chimpanzees, he regularly observed them going on border patrols and making efforts to penetrate neighboring areas to damage and kill other groups. He suggested that there is something deep in our evolution about our own tendencies for killing. The study discovered the overbearing territorial behaviors for the first time in the 1970s, and is still continuously observed today. Jane Goodall, an English primatologist, describes how she induced competitive fighting in the chimpanzees by bringing bananas into a local area of the two chimp territories so that they may fight over it. Wrangham compared this competitive fighting to people fighting over money or resources. Wrangham also observed that groups of chimps only avoid aggression when there was a balance of power and when neither group had a clear advantage. The line of reasoning meant that when another chimpanzee group encountered a weaker group, they would attack. This logic of thinking, Wrangham claims, is something the world's diplomats seem to need to learn again and again. Steven Pinker, who has done extensive research about the motives behind warring nations, comments that as countries realize the capabilities of other nations, they start to doubt who would benefit from war and are less likely to provoke aggression, a behavior similar to the chimpanzees. This supports his idea that violence is on the decline as people come to realize those innate instincts for fighting are not worth the possibility of getting injured, losing freedom, wealth, or security. Characteristics in males that make them better adapted for fighting suggest people evolved to be able to fight better. Aaron Sow, an evolutionary psychologist at Griffith University in Australia, argues that specific attributes make males stronger and therefore better quality mates. He concluded that fighting ability was relevant to many domains of interaction that suggest adaptation for fighting in human males. He claims that a long list of significant traits, anywhere from greater upper body strength to the ability to stay cool more efficiently compared to females in hot temperatures, supports this theory. Maria Gomez, the lead researcher in a study of 1,024 mammal species, concluded that humans are the most violent and prone to killing species of them all, above other easily violent animals such as killer whales and pit bulls. Working in Spain, they concluded that deaths caused by other members of the same species is responsible for 0.3% of all deaths on average for all mammals, while among humans it is 7 times higher. With our primate ancestors, we stand out as aberrations in our penchant to kill our own kind, due to our large brains, our social capabilities, and extreme territoriality. Common phrases in science such as trespassers will be shot is a prime example of how people take territoriality to an extreme and are willing to kill others to enforce it. Even former U.S. President Barack Obama believes violence is bred into humanity. He argues that people have the tools needed to limit and prevent violent behaviors in nature. In Obama's Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech, he claimed as codes of law sought to control violence within groups, so did philosophers and clerics and statesmen seek to regulate the destructive power of war, order, and enforcement of the law, or what he maintains is the solution to maintaining peace and preventing further violence. As an implication of violence, debate and discussion is preferred over fighting. Limitations come when the protectors of everyday citizens start to abuse this power. Yet discrimination at a very obvious level has been prevalent for centuries. According to the Britannica Encyclopedia, police are responsible for maintaining public order and safety, enforcing the law, and preventing criminal activity. In Dr. Martin Luther King's letter from Birmingham jail, he vividly describes what African Americans had to endure due to discrimination by the law enforcement that is supposed to prevent violence. The intended purpose of the march that led to King's arrest and his eventual letter was to bring national recognition to the overwhelming segregation in Birmingham, Alabama. King recounts, "You warmly commended the police force that had its dogs sinking their teeth into unarmed, violent Negroes, and watched them push and curse old Negro women and young Negro children. The abuse of power is a constant concern when implementing laws that are meant to keep people from harm's way. But Wrangham and Pinker support Obama's belief that structure and order is the answer to preventing violence." Even though humans may be predisposed to aggressive and violent behavior, this does not mean that people have to lack order in modern-day society. Acknowledging and understanding that people have an innate instinct to resort to violence is the first step to preventing unnecessary injury or death. The human race is in the middle of a transition where violence and aggression no longer serves a purpose. It was less than 200 years ago, duels were with swords and guns were socially acceptable forms of resolving conflict. Society cannot expect a quick transition in methods to solving problems in an efficient manner, but knowing this makes people better prepared for controlling it. Thank you.
Okay, Chantal, thank you. Let me ask the first question here. What information did you need before you began your research, and how did that information shape your research?
Before my research began, I needed to know how relevant my topic of violence was and if I had a supported argument. What I found was that people's first thoughts are that violence is very important to culture and society, and it needs further research for preventative solutions, but others firmly believe it's completely under control, and the control systems in place, such as laws and law enforcement, keep it under control. Steven Pinker, a psychologist and professor of cognitive sciences, was a gateway for the beginning of my research. As one of the leading scientists in human nature, he firmly supports the notion that violence is prevalent, but is decreasing as decades go on. In one of his discussions with Napoleon Chagnon, they discussed how violence is a way of life, but doesn't have to be, and that idea formed my research by giving me an argument to go off of.
Okay, thank you. And the second question, how did you use the conclusion and questions of others to advance your own research? One of my most important sources that mentioned many important scholarly sources had its own research question of, are humans biologically prone to violence, or are violence a world cultural phenomenon? And this question helped me to formulate my thesis of humans being prone to violent behavior due to the social advantages of being aggressive and the innate tendency to live by violence. This question helped me to formulate my whole argument and let me look at different aspects, so I had a well-rounded view of my topic and the voices of which I supported my argument with. Okay, all right, thanks again.